Oh, are we up? Looks like we might finally be up. Let's see. Hey guys, sorry I'm a little bit late. We were having some internet connectivity issues. It wouldn't engage for whatever reason. So I wanted to make sure that we had a good connection before we got started. So I wanted to kind of show you guys something a little bit different this time around. I normally use my my Stay Wet palette, which I love, but you can also use my table that I often paint on is actually a piece of glass. And so I wanted to show you guys, what it's like to just use a different surface. What I like to do if I use my glass palette is I'll spray the glass palette down with water before I put paint on it, and then I will and then I will put the paint on top, and then after I put all the paint down, then I will spritz the paint itself so that it stays nice and damp and it doesn't dry out while I'm painting. And something like what we do tonight, oh man, I'm just making a mess out of myself. Like where we're painting for like half hour, a lot of the paint is okay. If we go beyond that, the paint does tend to dry. Like part of the reason why I'm doing this on the glass palette is I was painting larger today. And so you can see what I was painting right there. I was painting those two guys. And so I was just kind of going in between different colors. Hey y'all, thank you guys so much for joining us. I was going in between different colors. And so sometimes it's just easier if I know I'm not going to be using it's just you as you do this more, you're going to develop your favorite tools, and you're going to have things that you love and things that you switch between. I have the colors that I recommended to you guys for to start, and that's on our starter kit. And I do use those a lot of the time, but certain things I even have colors that I like to add in and take out. Like I have like 50 some odd colors, which is too many. I am actively trying to downsize and Marie Kondo all of my colors, and figure out if they give me joy or not. I have bought so many yellows, and so many, and I use maybe 1-2 yellows, but yellow's a hard color for me. Everybody's gonna have their color that's tough. So, all right. So if you have the monthly or weekly pack, this is our reference image, and I'm super excited to do this because this one is gonna be as much about where the trees aren't as where the trees are. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but yeah, it's kind of a fun thing to do. It's a different exercise than what we normally do, and it's a great study. And then here is our palette, and it'll be similar, but we're not going to use these exact colors. But if you can mix these colors, you can get to the colors we're going to use. And so I only put the colors up here that I'm going to need, and I do have a favorite yellow, and it's called Australian Sienna, and it actually looks like an orange, and it basically makes Naples yellow. And then I also use indigo instead of ultramarine because it goes darker, and since we're mixing some really dark kind of colors, I thought I'd use that. And then I have sap green, which you can make sap green out of chromium oxide green and orange. But for a shortcut, you can just use, I'm sorry, that's khaki. Khaki is chromium oxide and orange. Sap green is like a darker, you can get to sap green by chromium oxide and Van Dyke brown will get you there. Or chromium oxide green and burnt umber. Yeah, Instagrams. So this is a great segue. I finally got to paint today, but I have been working on some stuff for y'all. Starting next week, I am looking for a very limited group to join me to start a monthly teaching class, a monthly teaching group where I can like use better technology. Instagram Live is fun and it's good for this, but like I've been running into a lot of internet issues. I can't show great camera angles. Like I really want to give you guys, I'd like to go deep and, you know, talk to y'all about what you want and talk about topics that you guys want and show you guys what I'm doing color mixing and really show you in depth behind the scenes. And I can't do that in this format. I'm going to be opening that up to a very select group of people starting next week, and I'm hoping classes will launch like May 15th, and we can learn together, and I can really like help you guys learn what you want to learn and really reach your creative potential and figure out how you can find your own voice as a creative and what skills we can do to help build your skill set. And I'm looking to make it affordable and do it in a group setting, and really looking for some people that are willing to help me build this program so that we can, you know, make it good for you, make it good for me. And I never thought I was gonna be a teacher, and this has been so fulfilling, and I'd really love to keep giving that way. So keep your eyes out. That will be opening next week. Now what I'm doing is I mixed a black from Van Dyke brown, sap green, and I mixed a little bit of indigo in. You can, instead of indigo, you can use ultramarine. It's just the indigo helps make it go extra dark, and that's why I'm using sap green and indigo instead of chromium oxide green and ultramarine. It just goes dark faster. So for what we are doing tonight, I can show you guys, like if I were painting by myself and I had more time, it's not as big of a deal. Okay, so first thing, this is the palm tree, and this is where I know even when I was first starting, I'd be like, oh God, so many leaves. What do I do? So we're gonna leave this for right now, but I'm gonna start showing you how to like not get intimidated by that many leaves that are like that crazy a shape, because we're gonna go in and we're going to paint, and then we're gonna cut back, and we're gonna, you know, really make these, we're gonna practice with these silhouettes. And we're going to practice keeping our darks transparent so that, you know, when we come back in, things can show through. And you can bring in your tree holes. So, you know, you can make this look, I'm just coming in here and like very gently suggesting silhouettes. All right, so now for this palm tree, I love this big brush. Let me see what I can do if I can get the general shape or if he's too big. I think I can. So if you can get the shape with a big brush, stick with the big brush because it will keep you from getting too tight. I know some people have said they have issues with being too tight. Another thing to notice is like he's got some fur, like he has some, like you don't want any of these lines to be too harsh. And so it's a little hard to see on this camera and on Instagram, but I've kept the darks very transparent so you can see the burnt sienna coming through. And this is on purpose because we'll go back through and we'll make some areas darker. And then if you look at like where the edges of where tree meets sky, there's a lot of transparency there. And so having these lighter darks will allow it to feel more like the sky's coming through. All right, so now we're gonna come in and we're going to do kind of this really awesome sunset. Now I'm gonna show you guys what this Australian sienna does. It creates this really yummy orangey yellow. So it initially, when you see it in a pile, it looks very orange and it just creates this yummy, yummy, yummy orangey yellow. And so I like to use this because it's not as harsh of an orange as cadmium, but it still isn't as yellow as a yellow. It's not as acidy. So, and it can go, this has a lot of weight into it. It can go this just lovely golden color. So it can do all kinds of things. It's a really fun color to work with. I just wanted to show you all that so that you can kind of get an idea of like what the capabilities of that color are. Oh goodness. So sorry. My allergies have been driving me crazy, y'all. I have just been, we had Marguerite on last night, and she said that she's been fighting. She wants to do abstract, but she keeps getting drawn to landscapes and skies, and she thinks it's because of her background as a landscape architect. Thank you, guys. Oh, goodness. You know, we've started taking family walks every morning, and which I love just walking. When we lived in Brazil, honestly, life right now is not that different from when we lived in Brazil. Like, there wasn't a ton of opportunity to go out. You couldn't just go stroll around and go shopping or like, and people kind of tucked in and, you know, stayed at home a lot, and you kind of lived and spent most of your time at home until occasional weekends you'd see people at barbecues and stuff. I mean, there are just a lot of like, hey Lainey, so good to see you. Oh my goodness. So, you know, quarantine right now is not that different from life as I knew it then. Like, you had to go to 5 different grocery stores to get everything you needed for dinner. You know. Anyway, so what I did to keep sane during that time is I would just go walk for hours. My daughter was very young, and we would just go and I would walk. I'd push her in the stroller for like 3 hours because I had nothing to do. I didn't have any, we hadn't really yet made friends, and you know, it's kind of what we're doing now, and it's fun, and it's really helped keeping us sane. The orange color is Australian sienna, I do have cadmium orange as well. And that's what, when I really want to go super punchy with orange, that's what I use. But this, now the downside of using a glass palette is whatever you are mixing definitely dries faster than, see this, when you use cadmium orange, it goes much more red. It's much more of a true orange. So it kind of goes pastel, where you get this lovely acidic color from the Australian sienna. It's just a slight difference. It's your preference, and it's just what colors you're trying to mix. So anyway, I've been watching the sky a lot. And just really, really watching the clouds and the sky and noticing the differences in it. And it's been really enjoyable. It's been something that, you know, to focus on other than everything that's going on, you know? All right, I'm going to... All right, I don't want this to be as dark of a black, so I'm coming in, got some white in it, so it's a little weird. I'm defining the palm trees just a little bit more. And I don't know if y'all saw my story today, but we were out manatee watching. It felt like a great Earth Day activity. It was a lot of fun. So as I am working on the sky, basically you just take one color and start a gradient and blending it. So I added just a little bit of teal. And you cut into the trees to define the trees a little bit as you go. The reason we do it this way is it's going to be a push and a pull between focusing on, it's going to be a push and pull between what you've done, and as it dries quickly on the palette, if that is the downside to these palettes, to not using the Stay Wet palette. Because you do have to work quickly, otherwise it just dries really fast and then you lose your colors. And as you're doing skies, you can come in and work whatever dry, but it does help if you're trying to blend to work wet over wet, just a touch. And this is a great example of how the sky is always more gray than you kind of think it is. It's never, when you look at the picture, you're like, oh man, these are very pure colors. But if I were to use a pure orange or a pure yellow, it would not look great. So you just kind of take the colors that you've blended and you go, you know, you add a little bit here. As we get further up, it actually gets like almost more gray. It's like this kind of just neutral gray color. But that's, as you are doing sunrises and sunsets, you'll notice the sky does like some really interesting, so this is, it just creates some really interesting colors that you would not have expected. Or when I look at a sky and when I was first painting, I'd be like, oh, that's blue, that's turquoise, that's so blue. And then when you really look, you realize it's way more gray than you think. All right, so as you're coming up, and as you're going into this other tree, you keep a soft hand and don't use like super heavy strokes. If anything, I just don't really own rough brushes, because I really like soft brushes. But it helps to not have it too loaded and just be very gentle with the edges, because we're gonna be, and wherever the edges of the sky meet leaves, you want those to be very soft edges. You don't want them to be hard edges, because that'll suggest leaves. And the thing that gets super interesting about trees is their shapes get defined as much by where they're not as by where they are. Hello, good to see you. So, now we're gonna move from that gray. It's sort of a blue into like a coral. And all these colors you need, as you're mixing, you need just a tiny little dash of, because magenta is a super pungent color. Oh, a little lizard on our window. So you just need little bits of it, otherwise it'll overpower things pretty quickly. And this Australian sienna is also a very powerful color. And if anything, this teal that I did is way too bright. It kind of looks funky. See, this is going in and sort of showing. Right here's some great tree holes up in the palm tree. That really helps define the tree. Some of these tree holes are a little too blue, so I'm gonna make it kind of reflect the sky that it's supposed to be. As we move up, I want the sky to, the tree holes to reflect the sky that should be behind them. Okay, so this is a good rough go. This is a good first pass. Now I'm gonna come in and I'm going to darken and define the palm tree better. And so I'm going to use Van Dyke Brown and chromium green oxide and just a touch of indigo to make it extra dark. You can use what do you call it? Ultramarine. So I'm gonna come in and darken this up. And the reason why I didn't fully flesh out the palm tree is because I wanted sky to show through. So I put in some of the palm tree and then I can come back and I can make it a little more full as a tree and more defined and still keep those sky elements peeking through, where if I came in and had to cut in the sky everywhere, it like some of these small places, it would be incredibly difficult to get the sky to really peek through and have that continuous feeling. And so also at the edges, everything is going to be lighter. So because some of the sky will show through, like light's going to be getting through. Your darkest darks are going to be in the center of a thing. They're not going to be on the edges. But your lightest lights are also not on the edge of a thing. It gets complicated. There's all these optics of light. I didn't realize that there would be so much science behind learning to paint. So I'm just suggesting palm leaves here. And that's really all you need to do. You don't need to have them be perfect by any means, especially something this far in the distance. You just need a general suggestion of the shape, because these are not the focal point. So I am coming through and I am making, because we kept our darks transparent, I'm gonna come through and make the darkest areas where light doesn't touch. I'm gonna kind of make them a little bit darker, and that will help define some of this to our eye, but it'll still leave things suggested when you look at it later. And it'll help some of the it'll help define some of this. And so I'm gonna come in here, and that's all. This painting is a lot like sculpture. Like you add on some, you take some away. You subtract, you add, you try again. So I am coming in, and some of these areas I'm gonna make a little bit darker. And some of these areas of the tree, like this kind of looks like a lot of polka dots. These sky holes are a little bit too big and prominent in some areas. So I'm gonna come in and once again, push and pull. You push and pull. You bring some things forward, you push some things back, you edit, you take away, you add. Ooh, just painted myself. Okay, so this is, once again, a great medium point for the shadows. They're pretty much where I want. I do want to come back, and the sky is far too chromatic. It looks fake where I am. It doesn't, the clouds are, it looks like on my end, it's just too pink and too turquoise. I want it to be a little bit more subtle. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna come in. Once again, all these colors can be sometimes hard to mix because they're like, you add a little bit of teal and it sort of takes over. And everything I'm mixing right now is like, look at this color. It's very, very neutral. And sometimes, like, especially as you're learning how to mix colors, get in there with the color picker. And the color picker is the eyedropper tool in like Photoshop or Elements or any of those programs. There will be some kind of like tool that you can basically be like, what is this color? And then create a color swatch out of it. Excuse me. Create a color swatch out of it and just try and match it so that you learn how to mix it. And that doesn't necessarily need to be what you eventually paint. But it helps you see the colors and it helps you understand how to mix the colors. And then once you understand all of that, you can, it's like before you learn how to play jazz music and before you learn how to improvise, you first have to learn how to, follow the rules. So you learn how to follow the rules, you learn how to do these things, and then you learn how to improvise and kind of break them and bend them. So do what you need to do to learn how to see so that when you're on your own, you can then start putting your own voice on it. So if y'all are just joining us, what I'm doing is the sunset that I was painting was a little too kitschy. It was a little too saturated, which, you know, that has a time and a place. So I'm trying to make it a little more subtle. Because all these colors are very, very close to one another. They're all very, very pretty colors, but they're not that different. So if you're kind of off mixing one of them, you can tell. So I'm just going in and adding and subtracting little sky holes. And just remember that as you go through, acrylic dries a little bit darker. So as I'm putting some of these in, and I'm like, oh goodness, that is so light. It'll dry a little bit darker, and kind of have to let some of it sit and see how it's gonna dry. When you're mixing colors, you want to mix them about 2 shades lighter than you want, so that they can dry appropriately. And next week, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna be taking one of the paintings that I did for either this or Art on Fire, I'm not sure. And we're gonna blow it up into a big painting, and I'm gonna walk you guys through that process over the week so that we can kind of work on some of the things you would do with a bigger painting all week. And you know, big paintings they have their own unique set of challenges. So I think that'll be a lot of fun, because then I can kind of show you guys how I lay in a big painting and do some different things. And I'm sure we'll encounter some like interesting problems that I can work through with you guys. All right, so I'm just gonna, and if, I don't know if y'all noticed, but as I was going, like some of these bushes were, had gotten a little unruly from what I wanted. And so I kind of, you can come back in, and this is where you get to edit. Like if I think this is just too much, you can go in change it so that it matches what you want to do. not totally what I wanted to do. So now that one's awkward. And this is, you know, it's a push and a pull. You change one thing and then you have to change other things, and it goes back and forth. But that's a great thing about acrylics, is that you can go back and forth and you don't have to fear that, you know, with watercolors, if you do one thing wrong, you kind of have to start the whole painting over. With acrylic, you can usually save what you're doing, and you can you know, go over whatever mistakes you made and fix them, change them, whatever. It's not the end of the world if you do something you weren't trying to do or whatever. The other thing about like these guys, they're not going to be as dark just because they're further in the distance. So they're going to be a little bit more gray, and they're not going to have as much of a value difference from the ones that are like this will be, and this will have the darkest darks. It'll be next to the latest lights because it is the closest one to us. Yeah, so you know, there's still some things you can come in if you want to futz with it, and you can kind of, some of these tree holes could be a little bit, they're still a little bit polka dotty, so you just change that by kind of softening the edge a little bit. But really from this, and I chose this not as a finished painting, but to really give you guys a good exercise to work with. Like, you know, this is too much of a silhouette if I were going to be painting like a painting for Art on Fire or something to sell. But this is a great example of an exercise to really learn a skill. And this is a fabulous one to learn how to look at tree holes and how to define a tree with positive and negative space. And you'll use that skill with everything. And this is where I want you guys to not be like, oh, how do I paint an apple, or how do I paint a tree, or how do I paint water? Because it doesn't matter what the object is. It's all about light and shape and color and value. And if you can get those basic concepts, you can paint anything. Oh, good. I'm glad you're gonna paint your acrylics. It's a lot of fun, and like I said today, I don't know if y'all saw my story, but don't do this for yourself. Do it because you want to do something creative. Do it because you want to learn and push and grow. Don't do it worrying about what other people think. And just keep doing it, and do another one, and then do another one, and then do another one. And before you know it, you will have made so much progress. And you know, that is what is special and beautiful. And it doesn't matter what other people say. Like it matters that you're doing this for yourself, and that you're bringing joy into the world, because that will show and that will shine through. And that is what this world needs right now, is more of that, more of you, more joy. So yeah, and I hope to see you guys. We'll be opening up the group next week, and so we would love to have you guys join us as the founding members. Thank you again for staying home with me, and I look forward to seeing y'all tomorrow night.